morning. Day 2 of our gun control debate. Today we will be debating to answer the question of whether or not stricter gun laws in the United States would lead to a safer America. In a moment, our two panels will introduce themselves and introduce themselves to the judges and tell the judges what their role in the debate will be. Just a quick reminder to the audience, we ask that you remain quiet throughout the debate. Hold your applause until the end. For the reporters in the crowd, remember that your tweets should be topical. You should be highlighting the positives or the negatives that are addressed in this debate. And as well, what is always welcomed is a good fact check. So feel free to highlight that as well. Again, to our reporters, make sure that you use hashtag MHS debate so that we're able to keep track of everything that's being done there. Judges, thank you for participating today. We appreciate that. And let's begin. We'll start with you guys introducing yourselves. You can do it from your table. You give your first name, last name, and your role in the debate. We'll start with the affirmative side first. Thank you.
My name is Michael Bennett, and I will be presenting argument number 2.
I'm Matt O'Donnell, and I'm doing the argument number 1.
I'm Max Drayline, and I'm going to be doing 2 rebuttals.
I'm Julia Pratt. I'm doing the closing statements and a rebuttal.
I'm Ryan Sullivan, and I will be doing the 3rd argument.
I'm Isabel Dagan, and I'll be doing the opening statement.
I'm Jimmy Bruno. I will be doing argument 2.
My name is Bobby Samara. I'll be doing a rebuttal.
I'm Jessica Sterkel. I'll be doing argument 3.
I'm Brandon Riley, and I'm doing opening and closing statement.
I'm John Kenyon. I'm doing a rebuttal.
Tanner Lochner, and I'm doing point number 1 and a rebuttal.
All right. Before we begin, just a quick reminder, when you guys do approach the podium, you make your address, speak loud, speak clear. The microphones are there for the television audio. They're not going to be amplifying your voices, so make sure that you speak up so that your points are heard. We will begin with the affirmative opening statement.
Hello. Again, my name is Isabel Dagan. There's a controversy of whether or not there should be stricter gun control laws. Gun control is usually a topic that brings off more heat than light. It is seen to be effective in different first world countries such as Germany and Australia. Although every country is different, the citizens within it are also. The FBI has recently reported that the violent crime due to gun use has increased for the 2nd year in a row across America. I would assume that everyone would agree that no one should have to worry about leaving their homes with the fear of not coming home that day. June of 2016, 15-year-old Arthur Digsby was shot and killed around 1 a.m. Him and his friend noted a rare Pokemon nearby in one of the neighbors' front yards. They realized that it was in the center of a well-known neighbor's yard, so they weren't hesitant to go in. The 2 boys went into the yard, and moments later, the sensor lights went off. Homeowner Ellen Jones, a 67-year-old widow, lived in her home alone and was awakened by the sensor lights. She then armed herself with a 9mm pistol and shot the teen, striking him both times in the head. Tragedies like these are the reasons why we need gun control. Imagine that was one of your kids. One moment living a life growing up to full potential, and only a matter of seconds later, forever gone. Throughout this debate, we will be arguing the fact that we should enforce greater gun laws throughout the nation. Thank you.
Negative your opening statement.
Okay. In my opening statement, on September 19th, 2016, in Minnesota at Crossroads Center Mall, inside Minnesota, an unstable individual carries a knife into a mall and stabs 9 individuals and threatens to inflict more terror. Dr. Adam, the culprit who attempts to murder to murder and then was apprehended by a off-duty police officer. That officer was identified as Jason Falconer. Mr. Falconer was an off-duty cop during the time, and he also does carry a concealed weapon. After Mr. Falconer seen that a man was stabbing someone, he immediately shot and killed Mr. Adon Aden. Mr. Falconer saves innocent individuals and stops a criminal from inflicting terror. From this incident should help us to input the spectrum without Jason Falconer, how the impact of Aden's violence behavior can affect families and close dear friends. Today we will be discussing the reasons why gun control is unnecessary and doesn't deter crime, and that gun control would have to lead to more deaths and prevent Mr. Falconer from saving his fellow men.
Affirmative, your first argument, please.
The U.S. should have stricter gun control laws because of the proven fact that countries with stricter gun control laws have fewer deaths by shootings. In Iceland, there are 30.3 guns per 100 citizens, and the U.S. has 101 guns per 100 citizens. In 2012, Iceland had only 5 shooting deaths, while the U.S. had 30,000. Out of those 5 shooting deaths in Iceland, 4 of them were suicides. Out of the 30,000 shooting deaths in the U.S., 11,000 of them were homicides. This shows how Iceland has stricter gun control laws and only had 5 people die from shootings, and 4 of those people were suicidal, which shows that it wasn't mass murders happening. The U.S. had 30,000 shooting deaths in 1 year alone. 11,000 of those being homicides shows how people with guns in the U.S. are being violent towards each other. If the U.S. had stricter gun control laws, there would be less shooting deaths each year.
Please hold your applause to the end of the debate. Negative, you have a minute to confer with the group before providing your first rebuttal. You have 20 seconds. Okay, your first rebuttal.
We're talking about gun control in America, and that's a big difference between gun control in different countries. So if you'd like to bring up, countries like Iceland or Switzerland, you're talking about other countries that have some of the lowest crime rates in general in the world. So that's not, at all similar to the U.S. and can't be like, you can't compare the two. If you want to talk about gun control in the U.S. and bring up all the statistics and how many people are shot and killed in major cities like Chicago, that just doesn't happen in other countries like Switzerland or Iceland, like it was brought up, and they can't be compared.
Negative, your first argument.
Okay, judges, just want to say thanks again for being here, taking time out of your day to judge the debate. So the first point we're going to be making is that the gun control laws do not deter crime, but gun ownership does, rather. Statistics have proven that from 1980 to 2009, there was a study that found that assault weapons bans didn't significantly affect the murder rate in the United States. And while states' restrictions of carrying concealed weapons had higher gun-related murders. And then there's a graph that shows that while gun ownership doubled in the 20th century, the murder rate actually decreased. So gun ownership actually deters crime, and if you want to put restrictions on guns, you're taking the guns away from the Good Samaritans who would possibly step in to stop a shooting. So the first school shooting occurred on August 1st, 1966 at the University of Austin, Texas, where a man opened fire from a warehouse across the street on the school. This was before the invention of SWAT teams, and they actually invented the SWAT teams as part of this event, as a response to this event. So the local police showed up to put a stop to this shooting, and they found themselves pinned down by fire because the guy had an automatic weapon. A bunch of students went out to their cars, and the principal went out to his car, and they all grabbed their weapons, and they all shot at the shooter who was shooting from the window across the road. Because of this, because of their covering fire that they laid down on the shooter from across the building, they were able to allow the SWAT teams, or I'm sorry, the police department to apprehend the guy because he was focused on the kids who grabbed their guns and started shooting at him. Also, there was an event where a 14-year-old showed up to his middle school dance carrying a .25 caliber pistol. He opened fire inside the dance, and he ended up killing a teacher and wounding another, as well as 2 students. What stopped this was the owner of the banquet hall where the dance was being held went out to his truck, and he grabbed his personal shotgun and he confronted him. He did not end up killing him. All he did was he had the shotgun, and just the presence of the gun in his hand forced the shooting to end peacefully when the guy who was shooting dropped his gun. Rampage shooters like soft targets. They go to mass areas where people are known to not have guns. They're known to be a large amount of people who are unarmed. That's where most of the mass shootings take place. I believe that if there were more armed presence in the United States where people were carrying and the shooters didn't know whether or not they were carrying, then they would think twice about carrying out the crime. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So in response to Tanner's argument, is a lot of what he brought up was the good guy hero scenario, which has been proven to be a myth. The first example that he used of the school shooting of the man using the assault rifle and firing at the students, and with the police officers not being able to take him down because of their lower grade weapons. What we're trying to do is not have those military grade weapons that shooter was using to be used at all. We're not taking away guns. We want to make that clear. We don't want those military armed weapons to be used against people. So in the good guy scenario, it states that a good guy can stop a bad guy with a gun. So if a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun, then there's no problem. However, it's not as simple as that. I'm going to read a quote for you that states why this isn't wrong. In the middle of a firefight, it is hard to pick out the good guys from the bad guys. This is the mayor of Dallas, Mike Rawlings, stating this from the Dallas shooting. What we're saying is it's not as black and white as a good guy and a bad guy with a gun. If you have that assault rifle and that assault military weapon, it's very hard to take that down. However, by limiting those, you'll be able to stop those mass shootings and limit that and be able to protect yourself.
Affirmative. Your second argument, please.
Morning. So, according to a study from Dr. Deborah Azriel and her team of Harvard researchers, 40% of people get their guns through transfer without being background checked. The distribution of guns without a license is known more commonly as the gun show loophole. Now, let's break it down so that we can all get the concept here. This term refers to a loophole in federal law where one man, and keep in mind, this man can be completely unlicensed, can sell a gun to another man, regardless of this other man's criminal record, or his mental state, or his ability to handle a gun. What good can possibly come of this? Close the loophole, enact stricter laws, and keep people unfit to handle a firearm away from firearms. It's not rocket science. So if we strengthen gun control and gun laws, along with closing this loophole, then inevitably we'll be able to lower the amount of mass shootings around the country. This is further justified by a study done by The Guardian that shows that 9 out of 12 mass shootings in 2015 could have been prevented if we had stricter gun laws. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a minute before providing your second rebuttal. Murdoch, nice touch with the fact checks. Jake, same thing. That's good stuff. I like what I'm seeing on there. Keep that up. $20 seconds. Your second rebuttal.
So in response to what Michael said, it's already extremely hard to get your hands on an assault rifle. Even if you have something as minor as ADHD, you can get flagged and you won't be eligible to get one of those guns. And also, the people who own these illegal guns, they aren't mentally sane, okay? And gun control isn't going to do anything to prevent them from getting their hands on guns and committing mass shootings. And the people who do own them legally are usually gun collectors or firearm enthusiasts, and they're never the ones to go out there and commit mass murders.
All right, negative. Your second argument, please.
Good morning. So if we do make the gun laws in America stricter, then the guns will be taken away from law-abiding citizens and not the criminals. Criminals find their way to get their hands on illegal material all the time, which is what makes them criminals. An example is drugs in the United States, which is obviously a large problem. Most drugs, all drugs are illegal. However, criminals still find ways to transport them, handle them, and use them. Same thing would happen with guns. criminals are criminals, and they will find ways to get their hands on firearms, whether it's allowed or not. Another example is prohibition. The 18th Amendment made alcohol illegal in the 1920s. However, people still found ways to produce alcohol and get their hands on it. So criminals will still be criminals and find their ways to get their hands on guns.
Affirmative, you have 1 minute to third before your second rebuttal.
So I'd like to start off with mentioning that Jimmy said that with stricter gun control means that we are taking your guns away. We aren't fighting that. We're fighting taking away the assault level rifles that are military grade that a civilian should not be carrying. We are not taking away the concealed weapons that police officers have, that marshals have, that FBI agents have. We're only focused on the ones that actually tend to be the mass shooting weapons. And Jimmy also brought up the drug problem in America and prohibition. Those are substances, not a gun. Alcohol can only harm you, not unless you're beating someone up. It only harms you, whereas a gun, you have the power to actually hurt someone. So, and then with prohibition, it took away alcohol completely. It didn't leave anything, like any wiggle room, whereas revising the Second Amendment doesn't take away guns completely. It would only limit the amount of guns that would be in the country.
Affirmative, your third and final argument, please.
Good afternoon. Orlando, Aurora, Sandy Hook, and Dallas all left their mark on American history for the wrong reason: a high loss of civilian casualties. How many more innocent children, teachers, police officers, and bystanders need to have their names and faces shown across news networks to show respect for precious lives that were taken all too soon? Lives taken by a gunman wielding a necessarily high-powered weapon, really unsuitable for any situation needed in America. No hunter needs his AR-15 to track down and kill a deer, and certainly an AR-15 won't do much to overthrow a government with one of the largest military budgets in the world. 7 out of 10 of the highest casualties and massacres were conducted using a military-style assault rifle. This is why I believe, for the safety of our nation, we need stricter gun laws so weapons such as these aren't a part of the next tragic, breaking news story that have come all too common in our media today.
You guys have a minute to confer before your third rebuttal. Again, if I could just remind you to speak up a little bit when you guys are at the podium, that would be appreciated. $20 seconds. Negative. Your rebuttal, please.
All right, so you mentioned that they had these high-powered assault rifles. Well, the weapons used in the Orlando nightclub shooting, the California holiday party shooting, the Umpqua Community College in Oregon shooting, Sandy Hook shooting, those were all done with semi-automatic, not fully automatic rifles. If you implement gun control, like we said before, that's not going to stop the lunatics who really are bent on getting these guns. These people are in a very bad state of mind, and they're just going to go through whatever they can to get the guns. Then also you have people like gun enthusiasts, people who just really do enjoy shooting guns, and they're going to want to shoot like higher power guns. It's more fun to shoot an assault rifle at the range than it is a pistol. So if you implement gun control, you're taking guns away from people whose passion is to shoot guns at a gun range and nothing else. Thank you.
Your third and final argument, please.
So our third and final argument is that gun control doesn't always work. Countries such as Russia and the United Kingdom both have gun control laws, and it has not been proven that they've done any good. Russia, who has one of the strictest in the whole wide world, has a higher murder rate than the United States, and the United Kingdom banned guns in 1996. And before the ban, the homicide rate was in between 10.9 and 13 homicides per million, and after the ban, it bumped up to 18 per million. So our final argument is that gun control doesn't always work. Thank you.
You have a minute to confer before your final rebuttal.
Okay. So mentioning the argument that Jessica said, the two governments, or the two examples that they used were the United Kingdom and Russia. However, those are very different from the United States because their governments are set up very differently. The United Kingdom is a parliamentary setup run government with no local, state, or state separate governments or separate parts of the governments that can stop these shootings. Everything will be run at a very slower rate because of the national government. So the government won't have the power to enforce these gun laws at an efficient rate as if the United States has the state and the local governments that would be able to stop those. Russia, though a federal government, is very corrupt, and when you see gun control rates like that, it's because of the corruption in the police and also the government itself. Thank you.
Okay, well done presenting your arguments and your rebuttals. We are now at the open floor portion of the debate. You guys will have the opportunity to add anything you felt you might have missed, build upon arguments previously made, respond to your opponent's arguments and rebuttals made throughout the duration of the debate, and add anything else that you believe to be important to your argument. You can begin at any time. Please remember to remain civil during the open floor of the debate. If I do need to stop it, I will, but I believe that we're going to be able to perform at a high and professional level. You have 6 minutes for this portion of the debate. You begin at any time.
All right, so you guys said that Russia's very corrupt. Well, corruption also exists here, so how are you going to expect the people to follow the laws here when there's corruption and there are many criminals who want to get their hands on the guns, and you implement these gun laws and they're still going to deal it behind the government's back, and that's not really going to take them off the streets?
Well, the United States, the federal government has checks and balances to prevent that corruption. So even though, yes, there's going to be corruption in every single government, the United States is built for that, to enforce the laws and to make sure that no corruption is set up in any form of the government. Russia is not set up like that. Russia, you have two people bouncing back and forth from prime minister and president back and forth, and while they're in power, that's not going to stop. So with those focusing on just building up their military, they're not going to be focusing on gun control laws, shootings in their country. They don't care about their population. While the United States is set up very differently, where they have the federal government, the national government that is overseeing the whole nation, but also local and state governments that are protecting the people's rights itself. So corruption is going to happen, yes. However, the United States is set up so that corruption does not happen. Russia, it's set up pretty much for corruption to happen.
So we're talking about gun control here. How do you expect to take the 200+ million guns in the U.S. and actually get a ban on them? You're taking away, you know, I believe it's 32% of households in the United States own at least a gun. How do you propose that would ever come close to making a concrete ban?
We're not taking away everyone's guns. We're not taking away all guns. We want to take away and restrict the buying and selling of those assault military-grade weapons. We are not taking away your pistols, your shotguns, even your rifles. We understand that people need to protect themselves, but you don't need to protect yourself with a gun that's going to shoot down 20 people in one round.
So to that point that you just made, many of your examples, particularly Isabel's, was used with a pistol, I believe, as protection. Shootings like that, where you guys bring up examples, are still going to happen, even if you let people own pistols, as they have been entitled to for their whole adult lives. And people who own pistols now, shootings are still going to happen, you know, like with Isabel's example. And to the point of assault rifles, the people who get their hands on them from mass shootings, it's not done legally. They're going to get their hands on them through, you know, second markets, and they're mentally ill. And the shootings that, you know, Ryan brought up examples of, like Sandy Hook or the California holiday party or the Orlando nightclub, these guns are not, like, legally registered. They get their hands on them illegally, and that's always going to happen.
Well, these are happening illegally because of the loophole in the law. If we close the loophole in the law, all of this, or not all of it, but most of this will be taken away. The loophole in the law states that these guns can be bought and sold illegally. So if we close that loophole, then these shootings will stop. So yes, there's going to be illegal activity with this. It's going to be illegal activity, like you said, with drugs and alcohol. However, by limiting that, you still reduce it. We're looking to reduce the amount. There's no way you're going to get rid of all guns. It's not going to happen. We're looking to reduce the amount of violence. And by doing that, we're going to have background checks. So those that are buying it illegally will not be able to, and we're going to close the loophole so that those buying it illegally, it's going to make it harder to buy it illegally.
So you want to talk about loopholes. I just want to bring up Chicago real quick. It goes very back and forth that people say Chicago has the strictest gun laws in the country, and maybe it's proved that it's just like any other city. But some facts are that there's nearly 82 shootings a week in Chicago, and CNN attempted to downplay that as a failure of gun control. But a fact is that 70% of Cook County jail member inmates in Chicago obtain their firearms from fellow gang members, social connections, and family members. And a lot of this, you know, gun trading, selling, using is done illegally, and I just don't believe that there's any way that there's ever going to be a control on guns.
So when people obtain these weapons, we're trying to control them coming into the U.S. So we limit the number of guns that are coming in. We do not want them to have the opportunity to be able to have these guns, to be able to get these guns. And back to the point of Chicago, Chicago does not have the strictest gun laws. There are multiple cities that have stronger gun laws. So, for example, cities where gun laws. Oh God. Well, you said. So, I feel like Trump right now. Oh my God. How does he do this? I lost my point. Oh my God. Even in cities where gun laws aren't so strict. So we have California, New Jersey, Rhode Island ranking among some of the top states that have the strictest gun laws. Most of those are being obscured by the fact that these include homicides, suicides, and for example, Alaska, there's no required permit to buying a gun, but at the same time, it has one of the highest gun violence rates in the nation.
So if you want to talk about like cities that have strict gun laws, I'll bring up DC. DC has DC today still has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, and in 1976, they tried to implement a law from banning guns to only police officers, and annual homicides rose from 188 in 1976 to 364 in 1988, and then even 454 in 1993. This proves that banning guns and completely trying to wipe them out won't work.
So, in the cities, what? In the cities that you brought up, poverty rates are very high as well. So poverty rate and the crime rate go hand in hand. So no matter if you restrict the guns, not restrict the guns, those still are going to be tied hand in hand. So the crime rate is not going to be tied with how many guns that are involved, because people are going to cause crimes with a pistol, an assault weapon, a knife, a bat, any of those. So those go hand in hand. So the examples you use, it's not whether the guns are involved with that, it's whether the poverty rate is involved with that. So the poverty and the criminal rate, that's tied in hand, not the guns and the criminal rate.
Time. It is now time for closing statements. Affirmative, your closing statement first, please.
Orlando, Blacksburg, Newton, Killeen, San Ysidro, San Bernardino, Edmond, Fort Hood, Binghamton, and Aurora. Within these mass shootings alone, 218 people are dead. 218. Some of them as young as 5 or 6. Those children killed will never experience their first love, going to college, or even learning how to ride a bike. Any victim of gun violence has had their lives taken from them too soon. No American, regardless of the gun control laws, should have their lives taken from them. No person should ever fear to go to the mall, the movies, school, or anywhere for that matter of fact. In the span of President Obama's 2 terms, he has had to address the nation 17 times. The safety of our nation should be put first, not as an afterthought. The violence needs to stop. Thank you.
In conclusion, our reasonings on why gun control is unnecessary and doesn't deter crime. Gun control laws infringe upon the right to self-defend and deny people a sense of security. The truth of the matter is the police cannot always protect everyone at all times, and due to this, people should have a right to defend their families and friends. It's very difficult to explain. It's very difficult for a father or anybody or a family member to explain that they could not protect their family member due to their situations, or that possibly they could have done something. In closing statement, gun laws do not deter crime, but gun ownership does not deter crime. In my closing statement, the truth of the matter is intentional deaths is higher than the U.S. than other countries with restrictive laws. That's it.
Before they speak, I just want to take another opportunity to congratulate you guys on a job well done. To the previous groups that went yesterday, again, another job well done by you guys. I also really appreciated the tweets that I saw coming out from our reporters. Fantastic job by you. And thank you to everybody that was involved. And to a larger extent, thank you to those of you that are in the media center today that remained quiet for the most part as we went through this. Judges, please, if you don't mind, provide us with your feedback and your winners.
All right, excellent job, everybody. This was an excellent debate. We thought both sides gave really kind of clear arguments. Something that we would have hoped to see more of was maybe some more fleshed out examples. You know, the arguments of the automatic rifles, how much do they actually shoot, you know, kind of more of understanding of what we are up against. So some more fleshed out arguments would have been nice to see. We felt that the rebuttals from both sides were pretty solid, and the open floor debate was very well done. Ultimately, we chose a team that had better adaptation to the rebuttals in terms of the arguments and then the rebuttal. And ultimately, they did have a better score, and we chose the affirmative team as the team that won this debate.
I mean, that was pretty much.
Anything else you guys would like to add? Advice? Anything like that?
I mean, you pretty much said everything.
I think, yeah. I think they're pretty much most of what I wanted to say too.
Yeah. You were both very researched. It was obvious that you guys were really prepared. That was great.
I think one thing that might have helped is just in terms of, it seemed like sometimes there were arguments that you already had in your head with the rebuttals that you were walking into. So an example was, you know, there was the rebuttal about how you can't compare countries. Like, you can't compare countries, but then the next argument was comparing countries. So that just seemed kind of a little contradictive. And that, you know, one side was saying we're trying to ban specific guns, but then it kind of seemed like there was an overarching theme of, well, you're trying to ban all the guns. So just in terms of maybe rebutting the specific points instead of rebutting the entire Second Amendment.